Hello, everybody. Welcome. So, today I am going to discuss Berlin Marathon tracking and pacing tips. I did an entirely separate video where I went through the course in great detail. I discussed the logistics really for the entire weekend, travel advice, and all of that kind of stuff. And so, this presentation, I'm really just going to talk about how to best adapt to using the kilometers that are on course and making sure you are finishing at your target time, assuming you have a target time. This is a really great race to go for a goal because it is flat and it is fast. Usually the weather is quite good, right? So this is one that a lot of people use to target a PR, a BQ, both of those things all together, etc. And it's really important to have a strategy for how to utilize technology and on course markers and all of those things to your advantage to make sure that you are finishing as you want. So let's go into all of that. I'm going to start first. I'm going to explain some things about the way GPS technology works because I think not everybody really gets it, and that's fine, right? But what we do is we assume that this thing on our wrist is telling us the truth. And it's pretty good. It's pretty close, right? But it's not 100%. It's definitely not 100% of the time. And there are some reasons for that. One is that GPS is a technology, right, that operates from satellites orbiting space, right? So you are this little tiny dot on this little planet Earth with millions of others of dots all of this Earth, right? And your little watch here is not always fully connected and fully jiving with these satellites orbiting in space. And I think when we think about it with that idea in mind, that it's conceptually understandable why this thing isn't always right all the time. But there's a couple of main reasons for that. And one is interference, and the other is recording gaps. So, interference primarily comes up in terms of environmental factors. And for a race like the Berlin Marathon, the two primary environmental factors that come into play are the ones I highlighted here, right? So, there's tall buildings and there's large groups of people. And what that means is your watch just has trouble finding you, or it pings you and it thinks that you are somewhere else a little bit off, right? And so if your watch doesn't know exactly where you are, it's not going to give you the accurate data for distance and pace and all of that, correct? And so those environmental factors really, in a race like the Berlin Marathon through the middle of a city with world marathon majors and thousands of people, right? These are factors that you cannot control. These are part and parcel of what the race is. So there is some interference, quite possibly and quite likely, in a race like the Berlin Marathon. The other thing is this recording methods. And there's some ability to adjust these. Again, this really depends on the watch model and which settings your particular watch has. But in general, what the watch does is it is not tracking every single millisecond of every single day and pinging where you are exactly in space. Instead, what it's doing is this breadcrumb idea, right? So it uses intervals, and it's connecting the dots between those intervals to say where you are at any given point in time. And so overall, there's two main concepts for this. This comes from the Garmin website. There's the every second recording and then the smart recording. But if the watch pings you and you go a different place within between that interval and the watch doesn't know, it's not going to be completely accurate, right? I have an example of what this looks like. These two slides of data, these are screenshots directly from the Garmin website. This is on the tech info within that Garmin website. So if you are using a different watch, Coros, for example, and you want to know what your The text settings for your watch are these. They're similar concepts overall, but if you want to know specifically, go to the website and look it up. It's all there. But here from the website, two different examples. So I have the smart recording, and again, this is what your watch is set to default, and this is how we normally operate, and it's normally tracking. And then we have that every second recording. So I highlighted between the two, right? They're overall, those tracks, those two lines from the A and the B, those two lines are very similar, but there's a little teeny tiny difference, and I highlight them there on this drawing. The downside of an every second recording is that it's a huge battery drain. This is gonna, it's gonna triple, double the use of your battery. And I really recommend that you test this out before race day. This is not a thing you want to just try out for the very first time on marathon day when everything's riding on the line, right? You want to do this and for multiple long runs and see how it's going to go and see what you're getting used to. But all of that said, no matter what interference comes into play, no matter which recording method you are using, you should plan to run over the distance on marathon day itself. And I'm going to tell you why you should plan on that. A, you won't be able to run the tangents, but that's not the only reason. There are other reasons. Here is a picture of the course map. There's many things to take away here, but one thing I'll tell you is there's a lot of turns on this course. I counted them, there are more than 40. That's a lot of turning, right? It's a 42K race. There's more than 40 turns, so you're not doing any single K really almost in a straight line. There's a lot of turns. And all of this adds up. It adds up, it adds up, it adds up on distance. It's really hard to make an exact tangent line for 40 plus times. Particularly on a course that is going to be as crowded and as packed as this race will be. The capacity field sizes for this race has been anywhere from 40,000. That was like several years ago. They've been increasing every year to like what it was last year. I was there last year in 2024, and they had 54,000 people. And man, like I couldn't put my elbows out like this because I had so many people, and I'm exaggerating slightly, but it was literally like, I'm running. There was no room. So again, if you think that you are going to run the tangent when you can't even put your elbows out, I don't know what to tell you. It's not reality. So again, plan to finish over the distance. Instead of your watch saying 26.2, you should plan on your watch saying something like 26.4. 26, hopefully not 26.5, but it might say 26.5. Hopefully, if you're doing like really good and the GPS is really good, it's going to track something like 26.32. That would be like a really good day. This is the reality of what the numbers are going to show. So, as I said, you're almost assuredly going to run extra distance in this race. You will not be able to run the tangent line from the start of this race all the way through the finish of this race, even if you wanted to, because you physically will not be able to based on all of the people that are around you. And in addition to that, if at any point you use an aid station, the aid stations are off to the side. The aid stations are not on the tangent line itself. You can't stand on the tangent line and reach out and grab a cup of water. That is not a thing that is going to occur. You will have to move to the side to grab a cup of water and then get back on the tangent line. Let's assume you have the space to do any of these things. So again, extra distance, always, always plan for extra distance. There's also that fact that I mentioned before. The GPS technology is just not 100% of the time. It's a little off, like a little. And all of this little bit adds up because this is a very long race. You're out there for hours. And so a 0.001 discrepancy, but multiplied over hours, ends up tacking on a good amount, right? So we just need to plan for it. That's really the long and the short of it. Please just plan for this. So how do we do that? I'm going to explain. I think I said this before, but there are no mile markers on the course. None whatsoever. If you are a person like me who is coming from the US and you're like, what's a kilometer? We don't use kilometers here, right? You know, a lot of other places, almost everywhere else in the world, they use kilometers, but we do not. And so it can be overwhelming and also confusing to all of a sudden have all of these things thrown at you that you've never like dealt with before in your life, right? It's not embarrassing to not know something that you've not been exposed to. So again, I have recommendations for how I would deal with this and how, because I've run the race twice, how I have dealt with this successfully. And I've done other international races in other places in the world. So I've dealt with this kilometer thing multiple times. My recommendation is not to change anything about the watch settings. Sometimes people say, oh, put your watch in kilometers. I am strongly, very strongly against that. Like for two reasons. One is that you don't need to, because there are other ways to deal with figuring out where you are and pacing correctly without doing that. And then the second thing is I don't need any other things for my brain to boggle over when I'm already trying to run a marathon. There's enough things that I have to try to keep track of. The race is hard enough, right? It's taxing enough physically and mentally without throwing this extra thing on top. So I don't want to have my brain go, what's 17 kilometers in miles? What is that? Oh, my watch says I'm running 4K per, yeah, 4 minutes per kilometer. What does that mean? Right? I don't want any of these. I don't want to have to figure any of that stuff out because it's hard and math is hard without trying to also run a marathon at the same time. So I'm going to tell you my method for dealing with all of this without all of these extra complications. Here is what I recommend you have on your watch. This is a picture of a Garmin watch face. These are the 4 fields that I recommend you have. And really, I recommend you have all 4 of these on the single watch face, so you don't have to do any scrolling or any of that stuff. But it's really easy to set this up. And these are the 4 fields that I recommend you have. Current pace, average pace, distance, and elapsed time. The one thing I want to note, it's really great to have the average pace. But you need to know that because you are going to run over the distance and your watch is going to clock you over the distance, your average pace needs to be lower than what your target is or what you have been training for. So let's use easy, even numbers. Let's say you're targeting a 3:30 marathon, which is 8 minutes a mile, and you've been training throughout for 8 minutes a mile. When you get into the race on race day, you need and want your average pace to be less than that. You want it to say something like 3:52, something like that, because you are going to run over and your watch is going to clock over. In order for your chip time to say 3:30 or 3:29:59, you are going to need your average pace to say something like 7:51 or 7:52 or something like that, but certainly under 8 minutes a mile. The other field, super important, elapsed time. This is before go back with me into the olden times where olden people like us didn't have all these fancy apps and fancy gadgets on our watches. We needed to think of things in elapsed time and where you need to be on the course based on that elapsed time. So you use those on-course markers, which are placed exactly where they want to be on course and you use your elapsed time to make sure you are hitting those targets exactly where you want to be. You don't need the watch. You don't need to know in advance how much over you're going to run the race, because it's an unknown thing until you get to the end, right? It may be 26.34, or it may be 26.35, or it may be 26.36, or it could be any other variations, right? So instead of trying to figure out what all of that is going to be and trying to figure out all of that math and try to like know in advance how much off your watch is from the on-course markers, instead, do away with all of that. Instead, know what your elapsed time should be based on those on-course markers. Hit the start on your watch the second, right exactly on the starting mat as you cross that starting mat, and use those on-course markers. This requires a little bit of advanced homework, in that I recommend writing this down. Most of us are not going to keep these numbers in our head. Again, it's easy. It's hard enough to run a marathon without trying to keep track of numbers. So write them down. And I'm going to skip ahead here a second, but there are these 3 web resources that will give you the exact splits for your exact target time. All you have to do is type in this website and type in your target time, and boom, it spits it out. So you can have a pasteband printed and buy it and have them ship it to you from the internet, or you can do the other way, which is the way I do it, and I just write. This is my handwriting. I write it down on a little piece of paper. So there's a little note card about yay big, and then I just put clear tape, packing tape on all sides. And then I stick it in my little shorts pocket, my little key shorts pocket, and I run with that. And I pull it out, and I have it here marked for every 5K, because remember, the course is only in Ks. So every 5K, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, so on. And then 42K, and then the end. I have exactly what my target time should be, elapsed time, and I use the on-course markers to match up. What does my watch say? What does what is my target, and where am I passing the on-course marker? This will be right 100% of the time, every single time. You can know, you can adjust. Oh, I need to be 2 seconds faster. I need to be 2 seconds slower, etc. If you want, you can even write these on your arm, right? Just Sharpie it on your arm, something. Just have some way to get through the race, knowing that you are where you want to be, and that is at the precise, down to the second. Make sure you are on target. Okay, I'm going to go back now to this other point here. Every 5K, this course is flat, flat, flat. There's one teeny little hill. It's not a big deal. There's no major adjustments that need to be made here. Every 5K then should be roughly the same within a couple of seconds. And it's very easy to put this one number into your brain. So let's say, going back to this example again, that 3:30 finish time, that 8 minutes a mile, every 5K then wants to be 24:51. 24:51. Knowing that, I can just figure out 5, 10, 15, 20, I want to hit it 24:51. And the way to know that you are doing that is to manually lap your watch. So you turn off the auto lap and you use the manual lap button. When you hit the lap button at every 5K, it will tell you what that interval was. So what your splits were for every 5K. And again, if you know in your head, just keep it track of that one number, 24:51. When you hit that lap button, it's going to tell you. It'll say 24:49, 24:53, 24:58, right? And then you can know if you're a little ahead or a little behind, or maybe a lot ahead or a lot behind of what your target splits should be. Very, very easy. You don't have to keep track of all kinds of whatever things. What is, what is 24K in miles? I don't know. Like, I really don't. I could figure it out, but I don't want to try to figure that out whilst I'm also running a marathon. There's another thing that you can do, and you can make use of these fancy race apps, watch apps. I use this one myself. This is called Race Screen. This is available in Garmin Connect. I don't get a, this is free, okay? I didn't invent it. I don't get a kickback for it. I just use it and I think it's great. So I'm telling you about it. And these are all the things that it does. It's listed there. It has all of the beautiful things that the fields that you want to utilize during the race. It has all of those conveniently located for you. You manually lap with this and it'll adjust for the correct distance based on the on-course markers. Again, it's really helpful. This app does not exist for Apple Watch, but if you want technology, these free things that we have available to us, this is a thing that you can use and it works really great. But again, if you don't need the apps or all these fancy things. I promise we were able to pace races before we had any of these devices, right? Know what your 5K split should be. Manually lap that. Write down on your arm or on a card or wear a pace band telling you where you should be at what point in time based on your elapsed time, and just match those up. Boom, boom, bang, right? You can always account for what's happening. You don't need GPS technology to be 100% right 100% of the time, because it won't be. You don't need to run the tangents. I mean, yes, do run the tangents when you can, but you will not be able to for most people for most of this race. And that's just a reality of this situation and the circumstances, right? But that's okay. That's not a barrier to you having a successful day, to you finishing at 3:29:59, if that's what your goal is, right? It is still possible to do all of these things, just making sure you plan ahead, do a little bit of research, right? Go to those websites I listed, buy the pace band if you want to do it that way. If you don't want to do your own little arts and crafts, that's totally fine. I get that. But we have all of these tools available to us. Make your plan in advance and then go in so you can be successful and hit the time that you want to hit. That's it. That's what I got here, folks. If you have questions, if I didn't answer something, if something's confusing to you, please leave a comment on this video. I read those and I respond to them, or you can always shoot me an email if it's something like, personal story you want to tell me and ask me about. I'm happy to answer that way as well. Either way, I hope everybody has a great race. As I said, I've run Berlin twice, 2019 and 2024. I imagine at some point I will be back in the not too distant future, because it's a good time. It's a nice time. So any questions, let me know. Otherwise, enjoy and happy training.